Thank you all very much for coming today. I'm here to just kind of tee up the next panel. The Grammy Foundation, as some of you may know, is very much involved in promoting and mentoring those pursuing the practice of entertainment law. And our Entertainment Law Initiative presents panel discussions all over the country on topics of compelling interest to both law students and practicing attorneys. And what you're going to see here, the first panel today, is a version of a panel that we presented last year at the Cardozo School of Law. This one has slightly different elements just because of the panelists that are involved. But I think it tees up the rest of the day quite nicely in talking about the type of deals that are available moving forward. I would also like to put in just a brief plug for the Entertainment Law Initiative's writing competition. Some of you may know that we sponsor a national legal writing competition for law students. Any law student interested in composing a 3,000-word essay on a topic of their choice that they feel is of compelling interest to the music industry today can be submitted to us. The 5 winning papers, those finalists are chosen. They are actually awarded cash scholarships from $1,500 to $5,000. And they get to enjoy the opportunity to come to Los Angeles during Grammy Week. We hold our ELI Scholarship Luncheon in their honor with about 500 of the top entertainment attorneys in the country attending. The finalists also get to attend the Grammy Awards as well as a number of other Grammy Week activities. So if you or anyone you know is looking for a trip to Los Angeles in February, please let them know that this is available, and you can find out more information at Grammy.com. Having said that, it is my pleasure to introduce the moderator of the first panel today, Deals in the Digital Age. You can find his extended CV in the program, but I would like to say that he is a passionate advocate for the goals of the Recording Academy. He is the current chairman of our Entertainment Law Initiative, and as such has been tireless in promoting the goals of ELI all over the country. And on a personal note, I will tell you, he is a great guy to work with. Please welcome Ken Abdo.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to, I think, just jump right into it. And we have our panelists scattered around a little bit. I feel like I'm calling them down, calling out for them. But Robin Mitchell-Joyce is here. Robin has a law firm. I think come on down, right? Come on down. And Robin has a practice in Nashville. All the bios for the speakers are in the brochure, so I'm not going to go through that. Robin's is a little outdated, and she can fill you in on that a little bit, but all good news. So Robin, come down, and then Suzette Becker, who I've known for many years, is here. Suzette is a local and gave me one of my first tours of New Orleans many years ago. It was very fun. And again, her bio's in here as well. Tanya Butler, where's Tanya? Because we haven't met actually, but she's a winner. She's a winner. And come on, I've read your bio and everything, Tanya. We haven't met, so this is all new. Okay. And then very excited to have Erin Frankenheimer. Erin, come on down. Erin I've actually known for about a year or so. And again, you can see from her bio that she's got great experience to bring to bear on this panel. Now, the title of the panel is very catch-all, right? Deals in the Digital Age, the Crossroads of Entertainment Law, A&R, and Management. It's just an odd grab bag, an odd recipe. But let's look at who we have in the audience. Okay, how many law students are here? They're law students. Okay, how many lawyers are here? How many lawyers are here? Okay, and then how many artists or people that are involved on the creative side of things, and how about involved in the music business side of things? Okay, so the music business people, I think, might have the plurality in terms of, it's not going to be so much. We're not going to talk a lot about law, okay? That's the point. Okay, we're going to talk about how law works, how lawyers in particular work with, in this process of, I'm trying to stick to the script here, in the process of, deals in the digital age, A&R, and management. So we have, with the exception of Erin, we have all lawyers. but they're all women, I might add, which is...
And we're all really cute.
And they're all cute women.
Do you think that
You
was
can
an
say that, I can't. But at any rate, so there's a lot of artists, advocacy here, but there's also some company people here as well. So Tanya's got a company background. Mm-hmm. Robin, you do work with companies and with entrepreneurial groups and licensing groups, as well as a rich past with artists. Suzette, again, I think you've worked both company side or business side and artist side as well. And Erin, who might be the most important person on this panel because she's actually been out there working now. She's youthful, obviously, as you can see, and she's been working working on the A&R circuit, working on a local show where she is introducing new music and new talent. So we've got a nice variety of talent and background. So we're going to try to be wise about this. We're going to try to impart wisdom. We're not trying to talk at you, try to talk with you about what we know. We're not going to be talking law or technical matters, so we're going to keep it conversational. And we're going to jump right into it. One of the things that I'd like to just address right away and kind of get it out of the way is that the lawyer's role in shopping, record deals or just shopping deals. We can talk about record deals, but we can talk about lawyer introductions to taking material, creative material to the buyers or the exploiters. Of course, exploitation in music business parlance is a beautiful thing. It's finding commerce. It's not like civil rights law, which is a bad thing, it's a good thing. So we have we talk about exploitation as a term of art. So lawyers can often, provide a introduction of material, music. We're in a music panel, music materials, artist material, because they're a filtering system. If the lawyer is known for having some kind of ability to discern good music from bad music and can bring it, to an A&R person, it usually gets attention. However, the lawyer's reputation is brought on. If you bring in bad music and you have a bad reputation, and you're not going to, that works against your artist as well. But my experience has been that in the past, lawyers were and continue to be a reliable source of getting material in front of the buyers of music. However, the companies don't sign lawyers; they sign the artists, and ultimately the project has to make some sense. But my sense has been that it's a nice way for lawyers to serve clients in a proactive way. But I would also like to get Erin's take on it, because Erin, of course, you've been on the other side and you've hung out with people that have accepted music or know lawyers and so forth. Just briefly, we all know that shopping is a very speculative matter. It's not really law practice. It's charging for it. It's usually something is on some sort of, if we get a deal, we pay you something basis, because who's going to pay a lawyer's hourly rate to shop? That would be unfair, I think. But Erin, so tell us what your perception is from your side of the A&R table on a lawyer's role with shopping music material.
The lawyer's role with shopping music?
Yeah. How's it well received? Does it go to the bottom of the pile? Does it go to the top of the pile? Does the lawyer's reputation factor in? I mean, if you're...
Well, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I think with anyone bringing on music, you want the reputation. I mean, in regards to whether they whether they have good taste in music and whether they're a good lawyer, all of that comes into play. Obviously, the first few things you bring up are going to be, first impressions make a difference. But I'm not really sure what...
Well, when lawyers bring in music, did you ever have music submitted to you by a lawyer?
Yeah.
Okay, so how did you take that? What went through your mind? Like, go through the checklist, like, who is this person, or I like this person, or...
Well, absolutely. Like,
yeah.
I need to like them as a person, and I need to like their taste in music. And the lawyers I've had bring me music, you just get to be honest with them. I love when somebody's really passionate about what they bring to the table. So, I mean, the people that I've worked with, because I like who they are as a person and like the music that they bring on, I've usually liked most of what they have. But the music has to speak for itself. Right. It's not about the lawyer. It's about what you're bringing to me. It's about the band. It's about all of that.
Right. One lesson I learned early on was I was at a meeting some years ago, and I had 3 pieces of music that I presented to an A&R representative. And after I was done, they said, all we really are interested is taking the package of this second one. And I said, well, why is that? And they said, because I think that's all that you're really interested in. And I learned right then and there that, it's always important to be very passionate, as you just said, about who you're representing, and not to just go in there and say, here's a bunch of stuff. So,
absolutely.
Tanya, have you been pitched in your role at all?
You know what? I don't shop, nor have I ever shopped, and I'm always concerned with artists who approach attorneys for the purpose of shopping. Let me tell you why. Because I work at a university and a very musical city, and very often I get calls from people that say, hey, you're a lawyer, will you shop my record for me? And in my opinion, and by the way, I'm not generally an artist advocate, I am a label advocate, just so you know.
That's good.
And I'm a very strong believer in personal responsibility. So if it were me, and I went to a lawyer that I did not know, and that did not know me or my music, and I asked them to please shop me to a record label, and they said, yes, give me $5,000, then I think that you're an idiot for going with that lawyer. Because, why? Well, it's all about relationships. It's not just any old lawyer that can shop music to a record label. Usually, it's a lawyer that they have a relationship with, somebody that they know and that they can trust, and they appreciate the judgment and the time that you put into working with an artist and listening to their music. I have some artists believe that you can go to a real estate lawyer and ask him to shop the record for you. So you got to be really, really careful, because if you have any respect for yourself or respect for your music, you're going to demand that the people that you work with have that exact same respect. And if somebody takes you on without knowing anything about you or your music, and they're willing to take a fee to shop you, then I think the buyer need beware.
Have you ever been pitched music on behalf of the company? Like being in your lawyer role, but have another lawyer come to you and say, hey, Tanya, could you bring this to your A&R department?
Okay, this might not sit well either. I always have artists ask me to listen to their music, and I never do. My specialty is not music. I know what I like, but I don't necessarily know what the public likes, and for the majority of my career, whenever an artist approaches me, I will not listen to their music, because when it comes to my job, I don't care what your music sounds like. It doesn't matter. The contract's going to be the same for me no matter what. And in addition, I don't listen to the music, because if I don't like it, then we're in really big trouble. I'd much rather just not even hear it so that I can represent you, objectively, and, not have to be concerned with how bad your lyrics are or how bad the music really is. You know what I'm saying? I can play ignorant because I never heard it. I don't know what it is. I'm just giving you the contract. So no, I have not been.
Okay, good. Fair enough. The big issue here is that most record companies, and I'm using record company now, sort of a traditional way, but we're going to talk more about some of the new distributors of music, but generally they're concerned about receiving unsolicited material. Unsolicited material that shows up without any kind of clearance or invitation, that provides, in some instances, some potential liabilities for companies, because they receive material that they are not sure where it came from, whether it was, who wrote it, where, if they like it, and it ends up another song that's released by the record company is somewhat similar to this package that was submitted, then there's, in legal terms, or you can establish access and maybe some kind of infringement claim. So the issue is really unsolicited versus solicited, and any of you managers, artists, representatives, and so forth, the point is to get yourself in a position, either through relationships or otherwise, so that you will be your submission would be solicited, would be welcome. And Erin, is that still a big issue when you were in the A&R staff?
Whether or not the music was solicited?
Yes.
The larger issue for the label that I worked at with Columbia Records was it pretty much had to be, everything pretty much already had to be in order. It pretty much had to be already at an indie label and doing extremely well. So, being solicited was, you had to be that, but...
It's like you were solicited.
Absolutely, you had to be.
The label went out and identified and the kind of artists or indie label developed artists.
They're willing to listen to it, but nothing really happens, so... Right,
okay. All right, in no particular order, but I'm going to skip by Suzette just for a moment, and I wanted to ask you, Robin, in your experience, I know you, see, Robin's interesting, but she's kind of been morphing from what we call a traditional music lawyer.
I've already morphed.
Okay, fine. Well,
she's
in the process.
I'm post-morph. You're not going to ask me if I shop projects?
Well, I would. I would just say that, you're in a position to talk about, the environment, the appetite for presenting artists now, you know, as opposed to it was, say, when we were practicing, you know, 10 years ago, 5 to 10 years ago. You know, and you're now working in other mediums and other opportunities for exploitation of music through internet properties and also other licensing companies. So just let us know how that's evolved in your experience. Bring us into the present a little bit.
This is absolutely the best time to be in the world of music, the world of content generally. It is the absolute best time. You have a better shot now, a better opportunity to do anything that you want in the context of distributing content, whether that's music or audiovisual works, through online, through mobile-based programs, through traditional broadcast, or even if you still want to make a piece of plastic, that's okay with me. And the reason is that there are just so many more options and opportunities to go not only direct to the consumer, but also there's a tremendous hunger in the business world for using content to market their products and services. And I think that's probably what Ken is alluding to or talking about.
Tell us how that works practically in your practice.
I will. And actually, I was wondering if you're going to ask me about shopping projects, because my formal policy is no, I don't. And that's really about, you know, the busyness. The only thing I wanted to say about that is that pitching a project, and I'm sure Suzette will agree with me, it is a lot of work. It is a very comprehensive thing to take on. It is not about sending a bunch of CDs to record companies. You're taking on the responsibility for someone's career, and that takes a lot of time. If you are going to shop a project, it means that you're not only going to send the music, but you're going to follow up. You're going to provide opportunities for the labels to see the artist or the band, and then you're going to go after it in a big way, in every way you possibly can. And that's really what my practice is now. Because if it's music, I also do a lot of film and television and other stuff, but if it is music, and someone comes to me and they're extremely talented, I not only see for them the potential to, maybe in a traditional way, distribute their music through what sort of looks and feels like a record company, but also to go to the consumer through a multitude of other ways. A good example of this might be, and these are theoretical notions, although some parts of it might be real. I have a wonderful act that I've worked with for now, I think it has to be 7 or 8 years, called Little Big Town. Little Big Town is a band that people call a country band, but they're not. They're a rock band. They just happen to live in Nashville. They were signed to Mercury Records, and they were dropped from Mercury Records. They were signed to Sony Records. They were dropped from Sony Records. After that, they went into the studio and they did the record that they really wanted to do, entirely independently of any major record company. And I love major record companies, and many close friends of mine work there. But independently of that process and independently of any major label distribution, they have sold 1.3 million units of their first record. 1.3 million units entirely independently. Now, what's next? They have their second record out. But when I think about Little Big Town, I just don't think about records in the stores. I think about an integrated project between NASCAR Racing, which is presented by a company called Athlon Sports that does online sports portals and fantasy programs. And I think about bringing Bass Pro in. And I think about selling music and running music as a bed underneath the online program. And I think about custom ringtones. And I think about on-site in the Bass Pro stores with selling custom packaged Bass Pro labeled Little Big Town records. And I think about tour sponsorships. I think about a lot of stuff.
Now this kind of thinking is, really different than the thinking of the music business of 20 years ago, 15 years ago, even 10 years ago. This kind of full-on sellout exploitation is pretty bizarre for some people like me that come from, an old school rock and roll background. But then again, these are the kind of things that allow artists to have some kind of means of making a living so that they can engage in making art and so forth, because the traditional sales of music just won't support a career like it used to. It doesn't have the same opportunities. Now, Suzette, you and I have both, shop material, And we do that because, and I think it's a good thing, it's a beautiful thing, because we believe in a particular artist, and we really want this artist to have at least an opportunity, some access, at least to say, look, you'll get some comment. But we know it's a difficult process, and I don't, I'm hopeful that along with my little setup here, you can give us a little maybe positive experience, or your sense of, I don't want to dwell too much on the shopping, but your role in working with artists and working to provide artists some kind of an opportunity, whether it be with a record label or through other distribution options. We talked a little about that last night. Could you just give us your insight into that process, and your role as a lawyer as well?
Okay, I'm gonna disappoint you, because usually when someone calls me and says, again, they don't know me, will you shop my deal? I usually say, no, I don't shop anybody's deal, but if I have a client that I'm already doing legal work for,
That's a good point. Yeah.
That makes sense.
and I actually listen to the music, and I actually like the music. Now, I do tell them, it doesn't matter if I like your music or not, just to do your legal work.
Right.
Because the same issues are gonna be the same depending on whether the music is good or bad or what genre it is. It really doesn't matter. But as far as actually trying to introduce somebody to someone I know, then that's a whole nother matter. But again, I never even charge for shopping either, because it's part of my legal services. And again, I don't really call it shopping. It's more of a recommendation. And generally, I tell the person on the phone, if someone tells you that they're gonna charge you $5,000 to put their name on a bunch of packages and send them out, I honest to God believe you're wasting your money. The better thing is to build a buzz, get some online presence, get enough people to your venues to see you perform. The labels will come to you, especially in the hip hop genre. The labels are calling some of my clients.
Okay, well,
they come to them when there's really something there.
a great segue, I want to throw it back to Robin now, is the status of A&R. Maybe to tell a little bit about your show, plug your show. I'm sorry, I was saying Robin, but I really meant Erin. And Erin, maybe a little bit about your show and how, you're in a unique spot here, having worked with the record company in a traditional A&R role, and now really working in an A&R role using the platform of a radio program. Really,
Yeah.
Tell us how that is, working for some of the young artists that you connect with.
Well, I'm in a much better position from an A&R standpoint, shopping music, discovering music now, doing radio, and I'm lucky because it's a rare thing, but I've been given a show with complete creative control. So basically, if I like something, it's going to be played on my show on Sunday night. It's just going to go right on the air. I don't need to go through anybody. I just go, this rocks, and I'm going to play it. And I was doing that when I got picked up by Columbia, and that was the appeal, I guess, for them. And payola, so I had to quit the radio thing, and I went full-time for Columbia. And it was extremely frustrating. It was extremely frustrating because they brought me in and they told me, find young acts, do what you're doing, find the undiscovered stuff, and the indie things, and we'll try and help you develop it. And just the way that the industry is now compared to how it was when I interned when I was 15 and A&R was my absolute dream, it's just completely different. For example, first of all, I don't know that Columbia signed anything the entire time I was there. I know of one act, and I believe that they already dropped him before they did anything with him, and he was incredible. So I just think that they are in the dark and really confused and lost as to what to do right now with the way music is and the way that we're buying, or rather not buying songs or albums. And all of that, for me, was really tough. But now being back on the radio and being able to just do what I do, that's a lot easier. And so.
Go ahead, Suzette, do you want to comment?
I just wanted to jump in. I was on a hip-hop music panel the other night. And interesting to me that DJ Chill was on there from Houston. Do you know him? He's got this big show, and he does a whole bunch of, he's really cool. Okay, but the one thing, he's cute too. Mm-hmm. The one thing he said that just absolutely, I thought was extremely interesting, do not send him your MySpace link. He doesn't want that. And he only wanted really nicely prepared packages. And so I started thinking about why that would be, and then, asked a couple, first of all, I wanted to ask you, do you like it when someone sends you a link, or do you like the package?
I live by MySpace. I live for MySpace.
You do?
Also,
Okay.
I try and direct my listeners to my MySpace page. That's where I put up the playlist. I like all my artists to have MySpace pages, because that way you can go and listen to the song, find out the information. It's quick. A lot of my audience is very young, which is important to me, because I like having, 12 to 18-year-olds call me up and tell me what they like and tell me what they're into, because they're constantly hunting for music. They're my best little headhunters out there. So I like having MySpace as a tool. I think it's a really intimate way to communicate with people. And, you know, that was the thing with Columbia. All they wanted were pretty packages. And what they told me was, find me the gritty stuff, find me things we can develop. And I just don't think that's really where it is right now. I think that if it's not already done, not already ready to sell, they won't go for it. And even when it is ready to go, they don't really go for it. One of the artists I pitched to them was, you might know of her now, Colbie Caillat. I believe she has a number 4 single, number 1 on sales on iTunes. But she jumped from the number 10 spot on MySpace to number 1. And I thought that was an extremely telling situation there. You know, millions of people are on MySpace. So if she goes from number 10 to number 1 of the unsigned artists, there's definitely something going on here, and it's organic. And when I pitched them to her, we pitched her to them, they told me she's vanilla and she's not going to work and no one's really into it. And it's like, well, right here, these are her millions of fans. So I don't know where you're getting the perception that no one's into it. But that was another extremely frustrating thing. But MySpace built that girl's career, and she is on fire right now.
Well, I want to just follow up with why I think DJ Chill was saying it.
Yeah,
It was like,
let me
because
know.
I was
'Cause
really
maybe his
curious.
show-
I was shocked when he said
I
that.
think I have an answer for that. Can I
Yes.
respond?
Sure. Tell mine later.
I don't know Chill, but I do know of him. And for some people in the industry who really take it seriously, clicking the link to that MySpace page, you know, sending me your music through MySpace, your link, is really easy to do. And thousands of artists will do it. But there's only so many of them who will actually take the time to prepare a package. And look, some MySpace pages are really, really elaborate, don't get me wrong. But there's only so many of them that will take the time to prepare a package, write a bio, include a photograph, include maybe a press release, put it in a nice package, put it in an envelope, put a stamp on it, and put it in the mailbox. And believe it or not, that doesn't sound like a whole lot, but very often when we're dealing with artists today, it's a lot easier for an artist to have you send a package to the label with your name on it, as opposed to do the things that you suggested, like build a buzz. Much easier just to have my lawyer with a name that everybody recognizes send a package for me, as opposed to me doing the work myself. And I feel the exact same thing as far as the package versus the MySpace. I can push a button and everybody's got my music, right? But how much work does it take me to actually put a nice presentation together and put it in an envelope? That's a whole different matter. So that's why I think.
I
Let's
think
hear what
that's
Erin
part of
has
it.
to say
Well,
about that.
I'm not very familiar with DJ Chill's show. I don't know if he's discovering new music. That's what my show is about. So, I mean, for me, I'd rather my artist be working on his music and not sending out a pretty package. Sure. And that's kind of what's important to me. And if you're an artist and you're serious about your career, you get a manager. You get a friend or somebody that's passionate about what you do, and you have them do that for you. And I don't think that it's necessarily the way to be right on the front lines, because a lot of the bands I work with, there's this local artist I am obsessed with named TL, and he doesn't even have a MySpace page. But I played his song on the radio, and it is one of my highest songs on
Talking
my
about
show.
RTL from 54th Platoon?
Yes, ma'am.
Good girl.
And so people really respond very well to his song, New Orleans
Yeah,
on My Mind.
it's a great song.
An incredible, and I keep getting on him to get the MySpace page, because I have these 12 to 18-year-old kids calling me up all the time going, I want to buy this album. Where can I find it? Where can I download it? Where can I listen to it? And he doesn't have that yet. You should get on him for
Well,
that.
I will work with
Let's talk
but
about, well, go ahead, why don't you weigh in, see?
I was going to talk about something a little different.
You want to move it off the...
Wait, can I respond to
Let's
Erin real
let's,
quick?
Okay, how can I say no? Go ahead.
What I really think is this, that the artist needs to be as versatile as possible, and you need to give people things in the format in which they ask for it, whatever that is. And unfortunately, you know, I wish that there were more younger people in the industry at the tops of the labels like Erin, who had a bigger vision, but a lot of people running the labels now are still old school, and they just want to go the old school way, and if you want to get to them, you might have to be able to, you know.
And then you can pass them around easier. And the other thing I thought of, I mean, just thinking about it, was you're less destructive. I mean, they get your record and that's it, and that's all they have in their hand. But if they go to MySpace, you know, all of a sudden they'll bypass you and go straight to Colbie. Oh, look, she's number one, and then you've lost their attention.
Well, we're kind of in this crossroads, I guess, where there's some you know, ways to... Pitches are, you know, can be received in different ways. With the numbers can be perceived differently, and there's a lot of great ways to get hard numbers. SoundScan obviously isn't what it used to be. BDS isn't what it quite used to be. I'm really intrigued with the fact that you even have a show, Erin, that does this, because, you know, we see with programming across the country that you know, the consolidation of playlists and so forth. I mean, to even have a station that does that, you know, is pretty amazing. I don't think that that's a trend. I mean, that seems to be not usual, you know, so to have that kind of a resource in the community is terrific. But because our title does say things about A&R and management, I just want to be faithful to that a little bit. I know we've got a lot of probably managers or people that are in a paramanagerial role in the audience, and so let's talk about, you know, the manager's role. Erin, you mentioned it. You said, you know, a lot of if an artist has a manager, you know, these are the things a manager should be doing. I mean, I'm sensing that what you're getting at is, look, if an artist is serious and maybe you'd be advising it, it's good to have a representative, you know, like who would, you know, operate as the foil for the artist, and then maybe it's not so good for the artist to be in the face of the A&R people, or the artist to be the person who you're dealing directly with. Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, not necessarily, but it is always good to have somebody else there singing your praises, making sure everything runs on time, making sure that the job gets done, you know, at the end of the day. And if you're not a very well-established band, you know, grab a friend. Family members can be messy sometimes, but, you know, grab somebody that you're close to and have them help you develop the band. But yeah, it's absolutely important to have other people working with you. You know, talking about street teams earlier, you can, if you have a fan base and you're a great band, you can make those things happen.
So what is the manager's role? I mean, in your experiences, we've all had experiences, I've got my own opinion, but in the developing of an artist team, you know, my belief as a manager is got an incredibly important role in the team. And especially now that a lot of the promotional and marketing efforts, ideas, you know, developing opportunities for the exposure of music, it's not really even in their job, in the label's job description, either an independent label or a major. That a lot of managers seem to be really taking on, you know, that proactive role, and really becoming a promotion and marketing department, if you would, of the artist's career. So, I mean. Just a word, you know, if we could get a word on this. And Robin, I mean, I know you want to take it somewhere else, but I mean, do you have a comment on this? You've had such a, you know, long experience working with managers and artists, and now you're working and very proactively.
You said long so many times. Because I am 104 years old, just in case you were wondering. Well, you know, it's sort of it's everyone's job. Everyone's job in the life of someone that creates music, whether it's a band or an individual artist, is to find a way to get that music heard. Mm-hmm. Now, subsidiary to that is that while you are out there and you're creating your music, you have to find a way to eat and to pay your rent. So there's a certain level of obligation to create, in addition to exposure, activity. And activities are all over the place. I thought the one thing that occurred to me about the conversation that we were having a minute ago is this: there were two different lines sort of going. Number one, what is the best format in which to maybe pitch to a record company, which is a very different thing than what is the best way to get the music heard or to find all sorts of other opportunities. And that really depends entirely on who is your consumer. Because I live in Nashville, there might be some thought that I do a lot with country music, and actually 70% of my clients are not in Nashville, and I only have 2 country projects that I work on. But it really doesn't matter what the format is anymore. You always have to ask yourself the same question, and this is what any manager should be asking. Who is the consumer? Who is out there that would love this kind of music? And then you have to work backward. And the manager then has to say, okay, how does this person like to hear their music? If you're talking about a demographic that is somewhere less than 30, the number one important thing for them is portability. The sonic level, unfortunately, is not as critical as it is to older folks. Everything comes through an earbud, and often one. And I know this because I actually have a little laboratory in my house of 2 teenagers. So I totally understand that demographic. Portability. So you're talking about phones. You're not necessarily talking about pieces of plastic in Walmart and Target. When you're talking about phones, that means you as a manager are going to be talking to phone companies, hardware companies. You're going to be talking to phone carriers for mobile space programs. Again, going back to that sort of, because I want to be very specific. Ken said be practical, be specific. That little Big Ten analogy, because they are this perfect world right now. I say, who is their potential consumer? Well, their potential consumer also goes to, for one thing, NASCAR races.
So not to go to talk to NASCAR and then not to think about who goes to NASCAR races and then not to spread out from there and realize that the people that go to NASCAR races also shop in Bass Pro because you fish on Saturday, race on Sunday. You know, it would be foolish. As a manager, it's just who's your consumer? And then it flows out from there. That's where the money is. That's where your crowd is.
Just a quick word on management. Many of the first deals that we see that young artists bring in are management contracts. And management contracts are, very important documents because they're really prospective. Most agreements, management agreements, have provisions for commissions, 15 to 20% in most instances, that will even survive in a term of years that the artist will be managed under this contract, and then after the term is over, an ongoing obligation to pay the manager a commission. All this negotiated up front before anything has been achieved on behalf of the artist. So, most of the artist attorneys like to see no management contract or one that has some sort of qualifiers built in. Like if you get a record deal, traditionally that was, or if you find a distribution for your recordings within a certain period of time, then it extends. And then if you have gross income of a certain amount of money, then it extends. So the way is to earn into the relationship a little bit. Now, of course, if there's a really super well-proven manager and a baby artist, the negotiation's a little different, where they say, hey, I've got 20 platinum albums, I want to manage you, then obviously you're going to have a little less time getting those earn-ins because they're, assumably already earned in with experience. Conversely, if it's a majorly successful artist and a manager that is capable, but yet, big artist is a lot of money, then there usually isn't even a contract. It usually just is, as long as I'm assisting you, I'll get paid, 10% or some amount of a net figure and so forth. So just a quick word on management contracts, because for those of you working with developing artists, that might be the first time you even work with the lawyer is on a management contract.
And you said yesterday also, this is one of the few things we disagree on. There are only like two I can think of. But that it's in the artist's interest not to have a contract, and I don't really agree with that. I really think that having an understanding of how much, even if it's terminable upon 30 to 60 days notice, and some kind of limitation of maybe what is not touchable if publishing isn't in there, is really good for both
Well, my
sides.
point is that generally speaking, I think that management contracts benefit managers, because what it does is it sets out usually the right to receive compensation beyond the management term, and it also, in a term itself.
Or it sets out what you can't get.
True, but I'm saying that during the course of a relationship, you're paying either you're paying a manager something that they will accept, or you're not, and the manager quits, or you fire the manager. So it's just much more of an organic relationship, and I see a lot of arrangements where there is no contract. It's just a relationship. Obviously, if it's not working, or you're arguing about how much you're getting paid, it doesn't take long to get to that argument. So that was the basis for my comment. But
And I have a comment on management contracts as
Go.
well.
Go.
First of all, I think the manager-artist relationship is one of the most intimate relationships in the music business. Your manager is your champion, your soldier, at least he should be. And I have worked with many managers. As a matter of fact, there's a manager in the audience now, Mr. Michael Allenby. He's on the panel a little bit later on. And he was in negotiations with an artist that I had a relationship with, and he decided not to work with them. Why? Well, they're magnificent artists, and there's a very good chance that they'll be very successful, and they do have a connection with a major, major superstar artist, but they're knuckleheads. And Michael decided that he did not necessarily want to work with someone who wasn't up on their game, should I say. And I say all that to say that when you're dealing with a manager in a management agreement, it can be as good as you want it to be, and it can be for the benefit of the artist if you recognize your bargaining power. If you are a new artist and you are looking for a well-established manager, there's a very good chance that if he is a really good and a well-established manager, that he won't want to have a whole lot to do with you. On the other side, if you are a new artist and you are working with a new manager, You have to recognize your power as an artist, meaning you have just as much bargaining power as he does. And just because he puts a contract in front of you that says that he's supposed to get commissions for 9 million years after the term, that does not mean that you have to sign it. Management agreements can be very beneficial for the artist when they have very short terms, when the commissions are maybe start off low and increase over a period of time, when there are performance clauses in the agreements that say, you got to get me a record deal by this point in time, you got to get me a deal with this in a certain amount of time, et cetera, et cetera. So they can be beneficial, but you just have to watch your back. And you look, and I can tell too, I can look at a contract and I determine two things. Either the manager doesn't know what he's doing because he doesn't know what half of this stuff means, right? Or he knows exactly what it means and he intends on taking advantage of you, one or the other.
How are we doing on time, just because I want to make sure that... 15 to 20, okay, very good.
May I add something on the manager front? Is that okay?
Oh, yes.
Okay,
That's why you're
as you
here.
were saying that they're your soldier, they're your champion, they're also your babysitter and your representative. So, in my experience...
Pick up dry cleaning.
Exactly. Well, I mean, you're just there to make sure everything is okay and everything is going well. And I had this great guy, a local artist that I love, and I had the radio show thing, I was working with Columbia, and he was one of the first people I wanted to put in front of everyone. But right before I started working for, right as I started working for Columbia, I met his manager, or his soon-to-be manager. And I told him after the meeting, please find somebody else. Please don't sign a contract with this guy. I went out of town for 2 weeks, I came back, 5-year contract. I don't even know how that exists. Like, 5-year contract, nothing in it for him. And the guy was a complete, just left a very bad taste in everyone's mouth that he met. And so it was really hard for me to envision flying those two individuals up to New York and putting them in front of all of these A&R executives because the guy was such an embarrassment. So if there are artists out there, just be very careful who you choose and don't get tied in, because this kid that I was working with was so talented. He still is, and he finally escaped somehow. But it was really scary, and I couldn't do a whole lot because the manager was so ridiculous.
Okay, we're going to go to Robin, but before that, what would you recommend then to a young artist? So you're saying don't sign. Do you have a sense of what a young artist or even a young manager should be doing in terms of evaluating if they're the best fit?
Well, I mean, I think first and foremost, you need to really have that great intimate relationship that was being spoken of before. You need to be passionate about the product that you're selling because you're their salesperson. So it can't be, and it needs to be about the artist and not about the manager.
Was that your problem with this particular manager?
Absolutely. That was a big part of it. Yeah. And, it ended up being, the artist was basically babysitting his manager in that case. Wow. Okay. It was bad.
All right. Robin, you had a follow-up on that or something else?
Just as a practice tip, it occurred to me to mention that because the demographic is so young and because the artists are so young, I have several projects where everybody is either in high school or about to graduate. Contracting with minors is an entirely different thing. And so if you're a manager, if you're a record company, if you're anyone and you're entering into a contract with someone, you have to look at what your state regulations are in connection with contracting with minors. Otherwise, your agreements can be disaffirmed right when you're starting to make money about that second record or second project.
True enough. I mean, just a general matter of law, minors can enter into contracts with adults. The minors can enforce the contract against the adult party or the adult entity, but not the reverse. And so generally every state has some way to basically have the contract affirmed so that can be enforced against the minor. And most record companies require that as a condition of being signed to a recording contract. And I've seen that movie a number of times with some young artists. And it's an important issue. The other thing I would add to that is working with minors is, you get into the who in the heck is really your client, because all of a sudden you're dealing with minors, their parents, and in particular, and that opens a host of other issues.
And parents cannot obligate the services of the minor. So if you're a manager and you think that having the parent sign on the agreement somehow keeps it from being disaffirmed, it does not.
So let's talk about deals in the digital age. It's part of our title, kind of where things are going forward. And it's the Wild West out there. I mean, there's really a number of new ways that music is being used. Young people, young entrepreneurs that are technologists are daily thinking of new ways to use music and are approaching those who own the content, whether they're record companies, if there's been an assignment of those rights from the creative people, or whether it's going directly to those content providers, the creative people, and are looking for ways to use music. And I mean, the exciting thing is that it's a great new world out there, especially for young, aggressive, entrepreneurial, and technology-minded people. And I think more than ever, the technologists seem to be leading the music business around by the nose these days, as we become so oriented and excited about the way these distributions can bring income in. At yesterday's panel, John Frankenheimer spoke on that, as well as Ken Krause. We talked about how presently the physical product, it still counts for most sales of music. It was, I think John, you estimated it about 80% right now, and that would leave the remaining 20% to all these various digital distributions that we're all abuzz about. I've heard that there would be about 8 more years or so that physical product will be an important source of income, but there's all kinds of statistics about, who really knows, because it's into the future. But clearly there is this greatly growing opportunity for music to be exploited in digital deals, which are changing and are evolving and are being created almost daily. Robin? Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's right.
So record companies do tell you that only 20% of their sales are in physical product. If you ask them, though, they will also tell you that they
Well, 80%.
I mean, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Only the 80%, only 20% are in online product. If you ask them, however, they will also admit to you that only 20% of their marketing budgets are dedicated to the online space. And if you don't think that there's a relationship there, then you're not looking at the numbers. There are many genres that will tell you that, their consumers still want hard product. Well, what they're really saying is they don't want any consumers that don't listen to pieces of plastic. It's one of those conundrums. And you have to jump off sometime and really look at the world.
So, Erin, let's talk about, breaking artists and talking about, selling what we, used to call gold and platinum albums. I mean, they're just becoming less and less achieved these days, and about how music is being sold in non-traditional ways. Now, we can talk about, and most of you are aware that, you can online sale your music. I don't want to get too basic here, but there are these aggregators. Obviously, you can register and get your music on iTunes and now MP3s with Amazon and so forth and so on. But I don't think that even Callie, I mean, it really didn't break as an artist until she connected with a major label, So, I mean, how isn't that still a reality right now, is that even though Major Label, and Tanya, you're sympathetic on this, and so we should weigh in on this. I mean, isn't it true, really, right now, with all this, and we're at an indie empowering moment here, but still, the fact seems to be that in order to sell the kind of volume of music that will allow you to sustain a standard of living that, allows you to enjoy, the basic and beyond basic privileges of being successful in America. That's what a weird, bad way of putting it. But anyway, how do you sustain a standard of living, without having a kind of a partner like a major label that can really promote and market your music worldwide?
Well, you tour. That's pretty much how you do that. You tour. And I mean, the digital sales are great and all, but I mean, we have iTunes, and yes, but that doesn't mean that the music isn't being consumed. Napster might have been shut down a few years ago, but LimeWire is still alive and well. So people are more than happy to go ahead and jump on there and download music legally. But they're also willing to cough up the $20 it is to go and see you at the House of Blues. So you tour. I mean, I don't know if anyone's familiar with Rhyme Sayers, but Atmosphere, that band has made a living off of touring. They don't do a whole lot of... Pardon?
From my town.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They don't do a whole lot of album sales, but that band and that whole group over there at Rhyme Sayers Entertainment, they tour 345 days of the year, I am sure. And I'm sure the other days are just spent trying to get from point A to B. But that's how they make their money. And that's a very indie, very organic, business. So I don't think that digital, I still think people steal tons of music. So we need to find other ways to make income. And I certainly think it's wrong for the labels to go ahead and think that they can now get a piece of the pie that artists have traditionally had, and now it's really all that they have left to hold on to. I mean, labels need to find other ways, and when I was with Columbia, one of the things that they were always really concerned about was finding the extras. That's the stuff people want to buy, the acoustics, the videos, the DVD sets, the things that make, your collection bigger. That's
but the independents aren't acting much differently. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about, 360 deals, which you were, alluding to, that the independent record companies really seem to be right on the same page as the majors. These things are called 360 deals. You may be aware of basically what it is the record companies, whether it's an indie at any level or a major, are saying, but for us promoting the band, no one would come to the show because they wouldn't know who you are. But for us buying all this and advancing monies to promote and market the band, you would have no income from these other streams. I mean, basically an artist's stream is from what? Recording, publishing, touring, and merchandising, basically. So they're saying, look, without the record company priming the pump, then these other revenue streams wouldn't be as good. So we should participate to some level in all these other revenue streams for at least some period of time. It's a 360 deal. So the indies, I'm challenging, seem to be jumping right in on this. I mean, indies that don't really even put that much money out compared to a major label, and they want a piece of all this. It just seems like when we talk about indies, are they really that much of a rebel group collectively?
Oh, I got an answer for that one.
Okay.
First of all, I want to respond to you, Ken, on how do you sustain a standard of living. Our keynote earlier today, Mr. Calhoun, he mentioned that you have to reevaluate what your idea of success is. And whether or not you can make a living and maintain a standard of living is what is determined by whatever you think your standard of living should be.
Well, I'm talking about something other than, peanut butter out of a jar in a van touring around the country.
Let me tell you something. I do believe that, the record business is indeed in trouble, but the music business is it's wonderful, and it's a great time to be in it. And there are plenty of artists that are able to feed their families, have a car, take a 2-week vacation, pay a mortgage, and they've never been on MTV or BET or all the other shows, right? So it is possible, depending on how you define success for yourselves, to be very successful in this business. That's number one. Now, number two, when it comes to the labels, taking what traditionally belonged to the artist, let me tell you something. Half the time when the labels are taking something from the artist, so you say taking, the artists don't even know that they had it in the first place or that they had a right to it in the first place because they don't know their rights, okay? In the Copyright Act, you have a right to the exclusive reproduction of your work, whatever it is. And it can be reproduced either via phonorecord, a CD, via print, and via digital, which means you are entitled to royalties on all three types of distribution. In addition, you are also entitled to performance royalties on sound recordings for the first time in the United States. So if you don't even know what rights you're entitled to, you don't know what rights you can fight for. Now, let me back up again. When you're dealing with a major record label, there's a good chance that you can't fight for those rights because you have no bargaining power. However, you are the ones who decided to go to that record label, so you get what you deserve. However, when it comes to the independent labels, however, I think Mr. Abdo is definitely, absolutely correct. And the reason the independents are able to get away with the type of 360 that the labels are is because you are not exerting your bargaining power. If it's an independent label and, they got a few artists here and a few hours there, you have just as much bargaining power as they do. And if you knew your rights, then you could stand up for yourself and negotiate a better deal.
So very good, and
I'm
that
very
was
passionate
very
about
good.
that.
This is, I think, a good discussion topic, and that is probably more today than before. The artists are able to build their own commerce to a level where, when they go to the point where there is a company that now wants to take on and exploit what the artist has done thus far, blow it out, the artist can say, "Well, I've already recorded these masters myself. I own these masters. I've already developed my website to this level. I already own and control that. I already have my own online store. I already have 20,000 fans out there. I already did that myself through principally online activities. I've already made a music video with my friend who's a filmmaker in college or wherever, and it's pretty good. It's already on YouTube." And so to the extent that the artist can be developed, not only, as Erin said, are they in a position now where they are being sought out rather than having someone pitch them as an undeveloped voice and face, that they come with a developed commerce. And that creates, what you're saying, Tanya, is a different kind of leverage in the negotiation.
You are so right about that, Ken. However, what you just said is, unfortunately, everything you just described takes a lot of work. And for the average artist that goes to a major label, they do not want to invest that kind of time or money in their career. They want you to sign them and invest the money in them so that they can be on MTV by the end of the year.
Right
Now,
on.
that is my experience. with
So,
artists.
but on topic, we have, this idea of making deals going forward. I mean, I would definitely say my experience and my encouragement for artists is to actually develop as much of the content and own as much of the content as they possibly can. Now, even if it reminds, borrowing, however you finance it, however you finance it. And there's a lot of investors. I've seen a lot more private investor deals, which is pretty interesting. People that'll come put up clearly as much as an independent label would. Not that they have the staff behind it or the passion or the experience, but they have $25,000. Go ahead.
I think that also we have to revise our definition of what a independent label is. What is a label? Is Starbucks a label? Starbucks certainly sells music. It used to be a distributor of other folks' music. Now they have a private brand. Every single retail store out there then becomes potentially a label. Live Nation, which started certainly in terms of digital format, coming from ticket sales, having purchased Ultrastar and Music Today, now is attacking the distribution of music through fan sites. This is the concept of actually paying to be a fan, allowing premium sales on tickets for pre-sale, allowing retail merch over the internet, and now with their signing of Madonna and their payment of $20 million, they're going to be in the recorded music business. So almost everybody you run into these days, they might be a label. The VC world, if you talk to them about the process of making money by the sale of a record in a traditional way, they're going to run from you. If you talk to them about also employing some sort of business-to-business strategy so that they actually see ways of making money from the use of your music, then they're going to be very, very interested.
There's another level, it seems, Tanya, you're talking about this, you've mentioned it several times. There's sort of a level of artists proving themselves as being not only extraordinary in the delivery of their art, but really extraordinary in the delivery of their business or the setting up of their business.
Absolutely.
Now, all of a sudden, that's becoming part of the package, including having a team, Erin, that's, not repulsive, right? So, this is for those who want to have a career, in music, it's almost like it's gotten more difficult. It's become more Darwinian, right? I mean, now you have to not only just be able to sing well and look half decent, you have to have all this other thing going for you. So it's like, arguably even more difficult to be in the game. Not to mention, I think that with the record companies, all record companies, major, independent, investors, anybody, the probability of anyone getting their money back in an investment is really small. It tends to be really small. So, the advice that I think we all see is, in controlling content and creating some kind of commerce which can be exploited through, ways to do digital business, and collect, whether it's through PayPal or through, iTunes or Amazon or whatever ringtone you might be able to get as an unknown artist. And so, because we're talking about basically developing artists here. We're not talking about Madonna. We're talking about...
That was what I was going to say. Madonna's deal is like a reverse record deal.
What is Madonna?
She's getting paid to tour. I mean, it said, I don't know all the numbers, but I read an article in Billboard last week, and it said that, Madonna's recording career, she sold something like 1.6 million records, billion or something. I don't remember the number. Huge. It was huge. And that her last album only sold 160,000 units last time. So, and they're taking a part of her tour because that's what they're depending on. And Madonna's getting millions and millions of dollars just to kind of show up, and they don't really expect a lot from the record.
It's a full 360 deal, though. Right. It's a very, very interesting deal, though, because it does connect all the pieces of the puzzle together in a way that sort of makes sense for them and for Madonna.
Right,
so do you think that's a good model for
also
developing artists, Robin? I mean, you think that it's a good model. So why don't you riff on that a little bit? Developing artists should seek 360 deals with independent labels?
Well, no. Okay. You have a lot of various ways of making income. In every situation, you're going to place that right in the hands of the person that actually has the ability, or the entity that has the ability to exploit it. But if you are working with a company like Live Nation, and they are very, very aggressive, and I don't know whether or not it's going to be successful, that they have not only the capital, but they also have divisions and technology that allow them to do all of the various things that should be done, then as a young artist, particularly since they are, in a sense, an online space company, it might be a very, very good opportunity because they say, and we will see now, I mean, I just looked at their first 360 deal a couple of weeks ago. They say that they can do this. We'll see if they can. So, I don't know. It just, there are no rules now. That's
Okay, so why did you
best.
change your practice? You made a point about saying, I have morphed. Okay, let's look at it from, now let's get off the artists. Let's talk about the artist support system and the people that are part of this artist support system. What has changed?
What has changed?
What has changed that caused you to change?
Well, the world is such a different place. The opportunities are more. There's no more distinctions for me, and this is just for me, between the various creative industries. There's no difference between music, there's no difference between film, between television, between print. It is all content. And no matter what the point of entry is, whether it is a piece of plastic sitting in a store, whether it is broadcast over radio, whether it is American Idol, that's just the point of entry.
So the music business is not so much about music anymore. Is that what you're saying? For
It
you?
is about music, but it's about the fact that that music can be combined with various elements and it can be distributed in every way that we know and we can dream about. And it's a whole new discussion.
And what do you feel about that, Suzette? I mean, your practice is kind of...
I want to mentor under Rob. It sounds like a brilliant idea. I mean, the music business is
really fun.
Yeah. No, it's about not being just an artist anymore, but being an entertainer and an entire branded package, and that's exactly what she's talking about. I think it's just to pick up on your independent label 360 deals. I've represented a lot of independent labels that are very nimble, and they actually do get involved in setting up the tours, and they do provide tour support. And in those cases, I think those are good deals for the artists. And I think they should totally be splitting it, as opposed to the Live Nation deal, which is, I mean, you're talking a completely different level of the little independent 360 deals.
But the model could be the same.
Yeah, but
Also,
the key,
Tanya-
the
They
key that Robin...
don't have the access Live Nation has to the venues.
So Tanya, you went through the traditional record company boogie, and then now you're an academic, right? Okay, so I mean, again, what is going on that caused you to make the moves you did?
Well, believe it or not, I'm a much kindler, gentler soul than I used to be. And I tell you why. It's because, it's real difficult when you work on the label side or the company side, and that's where 98% of my career has been. So we see things very differently. And unfortunately, I grew to have a significant disdain for artists, but only because these were the people who would sit across from me and sign their life away knowingly just to be on TRL. I cannot have respect for that. I cannot have respect for someone who does not have respect for themselves. However, when I ended up in academia, I actually went through a magnificent transition because I'm not just a professor, but I'm the coordinator of the music business program at the University of Memphis. So I teach music business to musicians. Every student in the program has to be a musician, and I teach them the business side of the business. And for the very first time in my life, I was exposed to musicians, artists, songwriters who really were about the love of the music and their craft, and they didn't want to have it exploited, and they wanted to make sure that it got to the public, but it got to the public in a way that they saw fit. So I began to gradually grow a respect for the artist, which is why I am so passionate about artists having a respect for themselves. And unfortunately, whether you like it or not, it is what it is. The music business is a business, and you do need to be prepared for that if you're going to succeed. And some people, you prepare more for your cosmetology exam than you do for your career in the music business.
So are you admitting that it's very unfair to artists? Are you saying that artists are just not enlightened?
I didn't say it was unfair.
Well, you're saying that it would, they didn't respect themselves and they'd sign their life away. I mean, is the point that you're making is that the business structure behind these recording deals? My experience has been you don't ask for it, you don't get it. In other words, the record company says we want everything, and then it's up to the artist to say no, you don't get everything because you need. Okay, that's where the lawyers come in, right? I mean,
That's
that's where we
correct.
justify our existence, hopefully, and good managers as well. But, okay, but you're saying what? It made you sick? You left the business because it was
Well,
unfair, or
yeah,
because
well,
it was
I
what?
left the business because I was about to be downsized for like the third time.
Okay.
But I actually.
What did that tell you about the business, though? I mean,
It's extremely unstable.
this is what Erin was saying, was
Yeah.
like you had a dream of being in this kind of, but in the
That's right.
reality is what? The reality is, where is it going? Tell us.
Well, the record part of the business is unstable. However, the reality is, like someone said, that the majority of music sales are still in the CD format. And what I'm saying is that is changing. And you have to be prepared in the here and now, in the format that we're in now, and in the format and the future of the business, which is going, sooner or later, I think you'll get your music at Walmart or the internet, and that's about it. So you need to be prepared for both, and you just need to be educated, as what I'm saying. And if you're truly educated in the business, then you'll know that it's not necessarily unfair what the labels are doing, what the majors are doing, okay? They're doing business, and the business model for many major labels today is that they have shareholders to account to. And if I'm a shareholder, I need my company to make money, and I don't care how you go about doing it. And it's not about ethics, it's about business, unfortunately. And sometimes the artist bears the brunt of that unless they have some respect for themselves and say, you know what, if I don't ask for it, I don't get it. And then even if I do ask for it, I don't get it. And if I don't get it, I'm not signing that deal. Or if I do sign that deal, then I am willing to deal with the ramifications of my decision. Just be adult about it. Man up, as they say.
You want to say something? All right.
I do, but you have to forgive me. I was on a call for 3 hours this morning, and my brain is nothing but a bunch of disparate, unorganized thoughts. It's not responsive in any
Yes,
way to
of
what you
course.
just said, which was brilliant.
Of course.
I just wanted to also mention that if you do not think of the world as a total, if you are not looking at the global marketplace, then you're missing out. That we are not, for example, paying a lot of attention to India right now. I don't want to sell 1 million of anything. I want to sell 20 million. There are so many territories that are absolutely in love with all things that are American, and we do not even offer them a pipeline or an easy way to pick up what we have. Also, the whole mechanism or the conundrum about the digital space and the iPod, we talk about the fact that it's difficult to import the music. I do not understand why we are not selling preloaded iPods. I do not understand why we do not have kiosks where we simply go and we hand our iPod over and we, pick out music from a menu if we don't have time to do it ourselves. I don't know why. I'm filled with questions all the time.
That's the idea.
It's so mysterious to me, the world. But I'll figure it out. Give me 24 hours, I'll work it out.
So, this is it's a good sense of the issues that we're now facing as we've discussed some of the traditional ways of doing business, some of the transitioning period that we're in now, and going forward speculating what might be the case. So, we're all part of this movement right now. I think there's been some good issue spotting. Hopefully it's been helpful. Not entirely legal, but it wasn't supposed to be. And I think that's it for now. We'll hang around for a little bit, but the next panel starts when? How long? In like 2 minutes? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, panelists.